Why did you set up Scott Logic and why the Northeast?
It goes back to my days working in Lehman Brothers. So, I had 10 happy years at Lehman Brothers, but then I had a small family, and I had the Northeast calling, which is where I'm from. So I didn't want to bring up my kids in London. So I was like, right, so what do I do here? I love my job. I love writing code in the financial services, but how do I do that up in the Northeast? And at Lehman Brothers, it was incredibly sort of, in the early days at least, it was a very entrepreneurial place. Yeah. So I'd actually created my own little sort of empire. I was head of fixed income analytics. I had my own graduate scheme. So I was running a mini business, if you like, within Lehman Brothers. So that really sort of putting those two things together, I then sort of put a business plan together for my bosses, and put it to them and said, hey, I can hire some really, really smart people up in the Northeast, and they actually accepted the business plan. That was the start of Scott Logic. So it's sort of scratching my entrepreneurial itch and also getting me back in the Northeast.
For me, when I was applying for Scott Logic, it was just quite surprising to find that there was an organisation within Newcastle working for a global investment bank. You just didn't expect to find that.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite different back then. Yeah. And so there's a lot of technology jobs in the Northeast now. But back then there really wasn't. And I remember when the Lehman Brothers were doing their due diligence on us, I had these sort of pretty scary investment bankers come up to the Northeast and interview the first tranche of people that I actually was looking to hire. And it was very, very different, and they were massively impressed. I mean, we were looking at very, very smart people from all sorts of different industries up in the Northeast, and they were incredibly. They loved it. And we went around the university, and they were fantastic. We went around the council; they were really fantastic and supportive. The Northeast was just a great place to set up Scott Logic.
Yeah, I guess it's a reflection that whilst the UK is quite London-centric, there's a significant amount of our population resides within London. There are a lot of smart people outside of London who want to do the jobs that are only physically possible within London. So I guess it was capitalising on that.
Yeah, I mean, creating a company which is solving really difficult problems. Actually, at the time in 2005, there wasn't a lot here. So actually, it was very easy to attract the best talent in the Northeast to this sort of nascent company. Yeah. So it was great times.
How is Scott Logic so well placed to serve financial services, Lehman Brothers, and all the other large banks that we've worked with?
Well, I think that goes back to our heritage. I founded the company on the grounds of actually hiring very, very smart people. So everyone that I was hiring had to be able to get into an investment bank, into the technology department of an investment bank. Yeah. So everything was set up at Scott Logic to fit with investment banking. So that was our heritage. So the whole of Scott Logic was a sort of, if you like, a mini technology department of an investment bank. And that's sort of that heritage there. It started then, and then it's actually grown from there, obviously into other areas, other sectors and so on. But investment banking and financial services is certainly where it all started.
I guess other industries, whilst their domain differs from investment banking, they can recognise the calibre of engineers that investment banks demand or need.
Yeah, I mean, back in 2005, it was almost like peak investment banking, and it was sort of, the joke was that they were the masters of the universe and all the rest of it. And the bar was very, very high, and that's basically what we knew there was that sort of talent in the Northeast, and that's what we were hiring for.
Whilst investment banks are a very good fit for Scott Logic, the model where there are smart people outside of London who aspire to and want to do London-style jobs. Yeah. The inverse is true as well. Many organisations within London struggle to find the talent that they need. So it's different now than it was back then. These days, there's a significant amount of competition from the big technology companies, whether it's Google, Meta, and others. There's always competition for talent. As an alternative, if organisations like that look outside of London, there isn't quite so much competition. There are still significant pools of people that they haven't tapped into outside of London. So I think Scott Logic is good for the financial services industry as well.
Yeah, and being in in the northeast. People can get a lifestyle can actually that actually they couldn't get in the southeast, for instance. And get to do great problem-solving jobs.
Yeah, you can work for a bank and still afford a house by the seaside.
Yes,
which is
right,
a good combination with a drive. Good combination. Yeah. So over the many years that Scott Logic has been running, what are the most memorable, both good and bad, events in that history?
Well, I mean, the first event that springs to mind is the Lehman Brothers collapse, of course, which was 2008. So the company had just been going about 3 years at the time. And we were just starting to get clients outside of Lehman Brothers. But Lehman Brothers was pretty much our only sort of revenue source. And then this news happened. I remember the weekend very, very well. It was a Sunday night. And, it was, no one thought Lehman Brothers was going to sort of, crash and burn, but it did. And we came into work on the Monday, and really I thought our business was over because we didn't have any revenue coming in. So it was an absolutely surreal, crazy time. We had one other client at the time, but it wasn't enough to sort of keep us going. We were about 30 people, so it was kind of well, what do we do? Whenever I look back on the history of Scott Logic, that weekend, that next week was the defining moment. And when Lehman Brothers went down, it was chaotic. No one knew what was going to happen. So we just plowed on. We tried to communicate with our client who was breaking up, and it turns out actually at the end of it there was a silver lining, and it actually turned out to be a bit of a blessing in disguise, because what actually happened was, as Lehman Brothers blew up, that split up into two banks, Barclays and Nomura, both of which became our clients afterwards. So we started to diversify, which was something that we couldn't do before because we had restrictive covenants from Lehman Brothers. That happened, and then the people all went into different banks as well. So all of a sudden, we started to get business from lots of other financial services businesses. So it was actually a very positive, although it didn't seem at the time.
Yeah, much of our work was in the Lehman Live platform, which it was a market-leading platform. It had a fantastic reputation, and bits of it went to Nomura, bits of it went to Barclays Capital, and the people that knew how that system and that platform worked became quite valuable shortly afterwards. So to your point, it actually had a silver lining. But at the time, the phrase that you heard over and over again was too big to fail. No one seriously thought Lehman Brothers would go bankrupt. Everyone thought, just like the other large FS organizations that were close to collapse, the US government would step in. I think the decisions were being made hour by hour, day by day at that point in time.
And the amazing thing was as well that we actually had a lot of invoices that hadn't been paid. We thought we'd never get that sort of money back. But then as the sort of court proceedings went on, actually we figured out, actually, we're going to get some of that money back. And so actually after 9 years, and it did take 9 years, after the collapse, we got all of the money that was owed to us, which was hundreds of thousands of pounds. And so it was a real sort of bluebird payment, and it was a real sort of moment in our history also. And the question was, what were we going to do with that money? And it was at that point where, I think we kind of got together as a team. We talked about it, and really we wanted to do something good with that money rather than actually just put it in our own pockets.
Or throw a party.
Or throw a party. Actually, we did throw a party as well, but it was a bit too much for a party, wasn't it? It was so we did do a party, but it was quite modest. So and at that stage, that was sort of 10 years plus into the business. It was kind of right. Well, we really should put something back into the community, back into the world, and so. That was actually the start of a charity, which is called the Altitude Foundation, which is to help disadvantaged children in the Northeast actually get into technology and get good jobs and raise themselves up. So that was the Altitude Foundation. That is the Altitude Foundation, and today is sort of grown from strength to strength.